Good evening and welcome to Vatican Connections. I'm your host, Noel Okel. Well, we're back for a brand new year, continuing into our 5th season of the latest behind-the-scenes stories directly from the Vatican. And over the holidays, there have been a lot of interesting things that have happened in Rome that made headlines around the world. So here are just a few of the stories that we're going to look at in tonight's show.
There are some big expectations that the Pope will take some major steps in 2019 in dealing with some of the big issues haunting the Church, and we'll look at what the Pope has in store for the year. The commander-in-chief side of the Pope's personality came out during his year-end meeting with the Curia, and we'll tell you what had the Pope all fired up and what he vowed to do. And just days before the start of the new year, an abrupt and rather unexpected resignation rocked the Vatican's communication department, leaving many people wondering what happened and why. This week in the history of the Vatican, we look at the year 1962, when Pope John XXIII excommunicated a very public political leader. Can you guess who that person might be? Well, if not, you might be surprised. And we have all that and more coming up next on Vatican Connections, so don't go away.
Okay, let's begin today, shall we, with a quick look at some of the main events from the Vatican over the past few days, starting with the Pope's message on Epiphany Sunday, where he addressed the crowds at St. Peter's Square after his weekly recitation of the Angelus Prayer.
Speaking from the window of his study in the Apostolic Palace, the Holy Father reflected on the manifestation of Jesus, which is symbolized by light. The Pope urged the faithful to open themselves to Jesus like the Magi, rather than being afraid of losing status and power like Herod. With the birth of Christ, the light foretold by Isaiah is present and encountered in the Gospel. Salvation, he said, comes for all people. And finally, the Pope invited everyone to be enlightened by Christ. Let us not allow our fears to close our heart, but let us have the courage to open ourselves up to this gentle and discreet light.
And on Monday, the Pope met with and made his annual New Year's address to the diplomats accredited to the Vatican, where he focused his message to them on the importance of multilateral diplomacy and goodwill between nations to avoid the oppression of the most vulnerable. Interestingly enough, but not surprisingly though, the Holy Father also took the opportunity to urge them to take necessary steps to guarantee the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual growth of children, and he even acknowledged the Church's own failure to protect them.
In questa circostanza non posso tacere una delle piaghe del nostro tempo che purtroppo ha visto protagonisti anche in diversi membri del clero. Gli abusi contro i minori costituiscono uno dei crimini più vili e nefasti possibili. Essi spazzano via inesorabilmente il meglio di ciò che la vita umana riserva ad un innocente, arrecando danni irreparabili per il resto dell'esistenza. La Santa Sede e la Chiesa tutta intera si stanno impegnando per combattere e prevenire tali delitti e il loro occultamento, per accertare la verità dei fatti in cui sono coinvolti ecclesiastici e per rendere giustizia ai minori che hanno subito violenze sessuali aggravati da abusi di potere e di coscienza. L'incontro che avrò con gli episcopati di tutto il mondo nel prossimo febbraio intende essere un ulteriore passo nel cammino della Chiesa per fare piena luce sui fatti e lenire le ferite causate da tali delitti.
And 2019 is shaping up to be an intensively busy year for the Pope, who at age 82 isn't showing any signs of slowing down. In addition to the various papal journeys scheduled around the world in the next few months, the Holy Father has a calendar fully jam-packed with major appointments, including a special synod of bishops on the Amazonia, a month devoted to the Church's missionary activity, and a block of meetings scheduled with his Council of Cardinals, formerly known as the Xxiii, to discuss reforms on church structure. Here's a quick look at what lies ahead for the Pope this year.
Pope Francis has a busy schedule planned for 2019. Trips to the United Arab Emirates, Panama, Morocco, Bulgaria, and the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia start off the year. Add in a February meeting in the Vatican on the Church's response to the sexual abuse crisis, and we're not even halfway through the year. Then October sees the Pope participate in the Synod of Bishops on the Amazonia. Pope Francis kicks off his international travels in 2019 on the 23rd to the 28th of January, when he makes an apostolic journey to Panama for the 34th edition of World Youth Day. In a video message sent in November, he invited young people to get off the couch and to improve the world through their dreams, ideals, and courage. February will be a particularly busy month for the Holy Father. On the 3rd to the 5th, Pope Francis becomes the first Pope to visit the United Arab Emirates. The journey's central theme surrounds interreligious dialogue and solidarity among members of different faiths. The leaders of the UAE have even declared 2019 as a year of tolerance, with a goal of promoting a culture free of religious fundamentalism. Later in February, on the 18th to the 20th, the Council of Cardinals takes place in the Vatican. The focus will be on revising the constitution of the Roman Curia Pastor Bonus. A new proposal was presented last December to Pope Francis under the title Predicate Evangelium. Its goal is to help the Vatican's governing body become more responsive to the needs of a missionary church. Probably the most awaited papal event of 2019 takes place in the Vatican on the 21st to the 24th of February. Pope Francis will meet all presidents of Bishops' Conference to discuss how to prevent the abuse of minors and vulnerable adults. It promises to be a pivotal meeting in the fight against sexual abuse, as well as abuse of power and conscience, which are carried out by some members of the Church. On March 30th to the 31st, Pope Francis travels to Morocco. It's been 33 years since Pope St. John Paul II made his historic visit in 1985 to Casablanca. Pope Francis will continue in his predecessor's path of promoting mutual comprehension and interreligious dialogue between Christians and Muslims.
Here's an interesting observation, however. A recently published schedule of the Pope's trip to Panama and Abu Dhabi seemed to indicate that despite the Holy Father's bullish schedule, the organizers of his trip appear to believe that he should slow down a bit. Instead of the usual 4 public events a day the Pope has during these kinds of trips, his January and February schedule is showing 1 event in the morning and 1 in the late afternoon. Also, his lunchtime break and rest has increased in duration from the usual 3 to 4 hours to now 4 to 5. Now, whether or not he sticks to the planned schedule remains to be seen. Now, don't go away. Our feature story is up next. Now, there is not a single doubt in my mind that 2019 is going to be a very significant one for the Church. Many people have big expectations that the Holy Father will take major steps this year to address the clerical sex abuse crisis that has literally crippled the Church in the past year. In fact, during the Pope's year-end meeting with the Curia, the Holy Father singled out 2 evils in particular that he believes has shocked the Church's credibility: that of clerical sex abuse and that of the grave infidelities of the religious. And he made it very clear to the cardinals that neither he nor the Church will ever tolerate the systematic cover-up of abuse cases nor the failure to take them seriously again. Former Vatican spokesman Greg Burke explains the mood of that meeting and what was said.
In a kind of preparation for the February meeting on the protection of minors, Pope Francis spoke to Vatican officials about sex abuse, and he did not mince words. The Pope said abuser priests are part of a web of corruption, vicious wolves who devour innocent souls. The Pope praised the work of journalists. He gave thanks to reporters who have been honest and objective in uncovering priest predators and have made the voices of victims heard. Pope Francis pledged that the Church will neither cover up cases or fail to take them seriously. In the face of these monstrosities, he said even 1 case is too many. The Pope ended on a positive note, saying that despite our human miseries, God's light continues to shine at Christmas, and that the Church will emerge from these troubled times purified and more beautiful.
Anche oggi ci sono tanti unti del Signore, uomini consacrati che abusano dei deboli, approfittando del proprio potere morale e di persuasione. Compiono abomini e continuano a esercitare il loro ministero come se niente fosse. Non temono Dio o il suo giudizio, ma temono soltanto di essere scoperti e smascherati. Ministri che lacerano il corpo della Chiesa, causando scandali e screditando la missione salvifica della Chiesa e i sacrifici di tanti loro confratelli. Sia chiaro che dinanzi a questi abomini la Chiesa non si risparmierà nel compiere tutto il necessario per consegnare alla giustizia chiunque abbia commesso tali delitti. La Chiesa non cercherà mai di insabbiare o sottovalutare nessun caso. È innegabile che alcuni responsabili nel passato, per leggerezza, per incredulità, per impreparazione, per inesperienza, dobbiamo giudicare il passato con l'ermeneutica del passato, o per superficialità spirituale e umana hanno trattato tanti casi senza la dovuta serietà e prontezza. Ciò non deve accadere mai più. Questa è la scelta e la decisione di tutta la Chiesa. E a quanti abusano dei minori vorrei dire: convertitevi, consegnatevi alla giustizia umana e preparatevi alla giustizia divina, ricordandovi delle parole di Cristo: chi scandalizzerà anche uno solo di questi piccoli che credono in me, gli conviene che gli venga appesa al collo una macina di mulino e sia gettato nel profondo del mare. Guai al mondo per gli scandali. È inevitabile che vengano scandali, ma guai all'uomo a causa del quale viene lo scandalo.
Now, even before we began the new year, the Vatican was rocked, yet again, on December 31st by another surprise, with the very abrupt resignations of both the director of the Holy See Press Office and his deputy, Paloma Ovejero, effective the following day on January the 1st. This unexpected resignation comes amidst an overhaul of the Vatican communications operations. And there's a lot of speculation with at the loss of the Vatican's top press handlers mid-scandal that there's a deeper story that's not being reported.
And so, to get the inside scoop on this, I spoke to Vatican insider Father Tom Rosica the other day, who himself has been plugged into the Vatican's inner circle for many years, just to get his perspectives on this and also on the upcoming February summit on abuse, where the Pope himself summoned the presidents of every single Episcopal conference in the world to Rome to deal with this issue of clerical sex abuse.
Father Tom, I'd like to talk to you really quickly about what happened at the Vatican Press Office just before the new year. As you know, the director of the Vatican Press Office, Greg Burke, and his deputy, number 2,
Paloma,
yes. Thank you, resigned rather abruptly. In a mysterious manner, which kind of suggests that maybe something odd is afoot. Can you give us any insights as to what happened, why, and what might come next?
Well, thanks for the question. I think, there's many different interpretations on what happened. I don't have the actual answer, but I could tell you that this is part of the greater reform that's been underway, slow in coming at times, but an absolutely necessary reform. So when the new prefect, Dr. Paolo Ruffini, took over in September, I think it's only fair to say that he needs his own team in place. Dr. Ruffini presides over a beast with many heads, all of those departments trying to come together. L'Osservatore Romano, the Vatican Radio, the print shop, the Vatican Publishing House, the Holy See Press Office, the Dicastery for Social Communications, and probably some other entities. And the Holy See Press Office has been struggling to try to find its own identity these past years. And no doubt that Greg Burke and Paloma Ovejero did their best, both are professional journalists, But I think the bigger question is, did that fit into the bigger picture, the vision of Pope Francis, and what is the direction under this new dicastery and the new leadership of the dicastery? So there are those who are, people thrive on intrigue.
Yes.
They come up with all of their theories. But I think it's good to say that they did their job. They did what was asked of them. It was a big surprise to many, but to others...
Especially during the timing of the year.
The timing of it,
right?
sure. But I think to others, we had heard rumblings over the past months. I spent the whole month of October in Rome, at the Synod, of course, every day in the Holy See press office. And I think it's fair to say that perhaps the level of contentment or being comfortable in that whole structure was not very evident.
Okay.
And so it's important that when people realize that they step down, they bow out gracefully, abruptly at times, they leave everyone wondering, and there's an interim director now of the Holy See press office, a young man, a very fine man, Alessandro Gisotti, who's been around for a while. He worked at Vatican Radio, worked very closely with Father Lombardi, and now as they try to figure out what's there to be done, what can be done to bring all of these different offices together. I think if you want to look at it this way, for a long, long time, for many years, the communications of the Vatican has functioned in silos, and there hasn't been a lot of dialogue and communication together. So one of the mandates that Pope Francis has given to this reform is bring all of these entities together. Over 500 people working in these different entities. So I pray every day. I pray for the bishop in the Eucharistic prayer, but sotto voce, I also pray for Paolo Ruffini, who's a wonderful, intelligent, plus a holy man and a layman, and I know his wife too, and that he can bring all of these together. I think Paolo is spending these months in a listening mode, trying to understand all the different components and what each can contribute. And the greater the cooperation, the better the message will go out to the public. That's what's there.
Yes.
So rather than dwelling on some kind of an intrigue or negativity or whatever, we're not dealing with the world. We're not dealing with the White House, which has many departures as well. We're not dealing with other governments. We're dealing with the church here. And it's a complex reality. And I have confidence that the right people in place will make this move forward.
Now, as an insider, you have the ear to the Pope. Have you heard any names being thrown around possibly for this role? Do you know of anything?
None whatsoever. I don't know any names whatsoever.
Okay.
All I know is I'm doing my work, and I'm very happy with the work. And I pray that they choose the right people. I think there have been some missteps.
Yes.
We saw the problem with Dario Vigano earlier this year and his abrupt departure, and some other people leaving. So those things happen with every organization, not just the church. And now I think with the right head in place, obviously the Pope, but the Pope choosing Paolo Ruffini and the right team for Paolo Ruffini, that will go forward.
Excellent. Now, can I also change the tone a little bit and ask you about the upcoming meeting in February with the presidents of the different Episcopal conferences?
Yes, it is absolutely a crucial meeting.
Yeah.
It's a very important meeting. I think there are many expectations and hopes for that meeting. Some of them accurate, some of them might be too much, but I have every confidence that the team that's organizing that meeting, the Pope, obviously, Cardinal Blaise Cupich from Chicago, Cardinal Gracious from India, Father Hans Zollner, and Archbishop Charles Scicluna are putting together a very important team of people that will address this on a world scale. The important thing is this is not a meeting that's being called to address abuse crises in the United States.
It's global.
This is the global abuse crisis that not only deals with the horrific crimes of pedophilia, but also abuse in every form. We see the stories coming forward now from India and women religious. We see stories in different parts of the country. Young people, youth, vulnerable adults, all of this will be dealt with. And I think for the first time we see that people cannot say this is an American problem, a Canadian problem. This is a worldwide crisis. And we see actually, as you're interviewing me, the American bishops gathered together this week in retreat to hear the big picture, the high-level reflection of what this is about. And I think the Pope's letter to the American bishops that was published earlier this week is an excellent letter which says, do not look for quick fixes. This is not a public relations problem. This is a much deeper problem of the culture, of the issue of clericalism, of the abuse that's taken place, of the privileged roles that we have to be in people's lives. And we need a deep, deep transformation and conversion in each of our lives. So that meeting is extremely important. Some are saying this is a meeting, a make it or break it meeting for this pontificate. I believe that will be a make it meeting, a clear direction being given.
So that was my next question. You know, based on your experience in seeing all of these types of things unfold in the past, what do you see coming out of this meeting? Will it be like policies and procedures? Like what's the next steps and what happens from here?
That's the big question. First of all, a profound awareness that Houston, we've got a problem, a huge problem. We need to address this. We need to be on the same page. We cannot have bishops' conferences or individual bishops thinking that we're exempt from this, we don't have to abide by this. This has been one of the clear problems of the United States after the Dallas Charter, where you had some bishops choosing not to abide by this. And when you make that kind of a false choice, you pay the price for it. So you apply that in a world scale, that some countries for whom this is unthinkable, and other countries that are beginning to see this reality, what are the proactive measures that can be taken? What is the best possible practices that can be in place that all of us are together? We represent the universal church, and we have to be concerned about this in every different culture. So I believe that's already a first step, and that we're all singing from the same hymnal, if you will.
Okay. So because in the past or recently we've been hearing things or some complaints that maybe the Pope isn't acting as fast or acting well. You hear this a lot in the U.S. This seems to me what he's doing is really giving it some thought, really putting some plans in place, and this is going to be a universal, across the world, I guess.
A simplistic approach to the situation would have been, Americans, get your act together. This is a problem that you have. But the Holy Father realizes this is a worldwide phenomenon, and he's responding to this in the best possible way by getting some of the most competent people around him to address the situation. The appointment of Archbishop Charles Scicluna, the Archbishop of Malta, to the position in the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And Archbishop Scicluna is the world expert, the ecclesial world expert on the issues of abuse. And therefore, by putting someone in place, we're going to see a marked change in how these issues are going to be dealt with. What actually is going to come from it, we don't know. But I believe the combination of the Holy Spirit, the clear direction of the Pope, professionalism, victims who will be addressing, survivors who will be addressing the bishops, is a very important part of the February meeting. I will be present in Rome during that period. I don't know what my role is yet, but I'll be present there, and I believe it's perhaps one of the most historic moments of this pontificate.
That's amazing. So I can always call you on the phone while you're there to get the latest updates.
But remember that I have to sleep sometimes at night. Normally when you wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I say, no, what are you doing?
Thanks so much, Father Tom. I appreciate your help.
Thank you.
I appreciate your help with this.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, we go back in time and have a look at some of the historic events that happened this week at the Vatican.
And we begin our trek through the Vatican history in the year 1198, where on January the 8th, almost 821 years ago, Laterio Scotti became the first controversial Pope Innocent III.
Historians note that it was this pope who raised the seat of Peter to the zenith of papal prestige and power and brought Christian Europe close to being a united theocracy. He oversaw 2 crusades and established fees for indulgences, specifically to fatten the church's treasury. In addition to being the pope who sanctioned the new Franciscan and Dominican orders, he issued over 6,000 decrees and formalized many of his reforms with the Fourth Lateran Council, where the term transubstantiate was first officially used. His papacy lasted 18 years and ended in 1216.
Let's move on now to a more contemporary event. Can you guess which figure was excommunicated in the 60s? Take a moment. If you've guessed Fidel Castro, you've guessed correct. It was on January the 3rd, 1962, that history recorded the excommunication of the Cuban leader by Pope John the 23rd.
So why was he excommunicated, you wonder? Well, that's actually a good question. There are different theories on this. Some scholars say that it was on the basis of a 1949 decree that forbade Catholics from becoming communists. Others argue that Castro was cut off, so to say, for inciting violence against bishops. And yet others say that the excommunication never was fully executed. In any event, Castro had a long history of suppressing the Catholic Church in Cuba. even going so far as to ban Christmas in 1968.
Now, despite all of that, however, the excommunication did not stop Castro from meeting with St. John Paul II in 1998, Pope Francis in 2015. Other political leaders excommunicated from the Church include Henry VIII, not surprisingly, and none other than Napoleon Bonaparte himself. And that is our show for this week. We certainly love to hear any comments that you might have on today's story. So why not drop us a line on the Salt and Light Facebook page or on our Twitter handle listed below. I'm Noel Local. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we will see you next week here on Vatican Connections.